You see, we are facing a situation where hundreds of thousands, probably millions of people are involved in this kind of experimentation. And if you would approach it rationally, you would want to create centers in which people could have these experiences with pure substances, with the right kind of set and setting, and they would not only benefit from it themselves, but you would collect extensive research material so that you would understand these substances, you would understand these states. We are in a very peculiar kind of situation that Bobby Kennedy actually brought up in this discussion in, I think it was in the Congress, where he said, we are in the strange situation that these hundreds of thousands of young people have been experimenting with these substances, and the professionals don't know anything about it. So I think it could really be extremely beneficial. I think the dangers are minimal of psychedelics when they are used properly. There was a study by Sidney Cohen where he collected reports about 25,000 administrations and showed that this was at the time when it was done by responsible professionals, at a time when we didn't know very much about it, but it was understood that when people take it, they had to be in a protected environment, there had to be somebody with them, they had to be kept overnight, and in the morning they had to be an interview with them to see where they are landing. And under those circumstances, the risks were really minimal. And also the other cultures, the pre-industrial ancient cultures, had absolutely no problems using it for a ritual and spiritual practice, and they didn't have any university education. So, those are powerful tools, but they can be used safely and they can be used with great benefits. So there is no reason why they should not be used in our culture. And unfortunately, we are a group of people who have abused everything else. So it's hard to imagine that psychedelics would be an exception. We have abused atomic energy, we have abused medicine, we have biological warfare, we have abused laser technology, we have abused rocket technology. The tremendous achievements of science have been all, in one or another context, turned into very destructive tools. There's something that I think would be extremely important if psychedelics were used in a responsible way. And this is that when people do self-exploration with psychedelics, they tend to develop very specific changes in personality, changes in hierarchy of values, changes in lifestyle. So, for example, there's a significant reduction of aggression, increase of tolerance, tolerance which is sexual or gender, racial, cultural, political. People start feeling more like planetary citizens rather than Americans or Russians and so on. In a way that's kind of similar for the astronauts who, went to the moon and they saw the planet from outer space. The other thing, people have experiences of identification with nature, with different aspects of nature, with animals and so on. And they develop quite, without any instructions, without any guidance, very profound ecological sensitivity. They suddenly understand that, we are critically dependent on nature. There's nothing we can do to nature that we wouldn't do to ourselves. There's also a tendency to move from kind of over-ambitious plans carried out in a kind of linear trajectory where the solution, the happiness is always in the future. We'll all be in a great shape when we double the gross national product or triple the gross national product, or when we become something big in the future. So that's typical linear obsession of a typical Westerner. Things are not okay the way they are now. Something has to happen. We have to achieve something in the future. So people who use psychedelics responsibly, and they undergo the kind of transformation I'm talking about, they start drawing much more satisfaction from the here and now. They enjoy more what is available rather than expecting happiness from something that's going to come in the future. So those are all changes that would be extremely useful in the kind of a global crisis that we are facing now, when we are plundering non-renewable resources and turning them into pollution. And we are going to be exporting it into the third world. We want, the Chinese and the Indians and Africa to do the same that we are doing. This is a blueprint for suicide. So if people could develop more of these kinds of values and what has been called voluntary simplicity, so on, there would be a much better chance for the planet. And I'm not talking just about psychedelics. I don't want to promote psychedelics, but responsible work with these non-ordinary states. This could be some intense spiritual practice. It could be some powerful forms of experiential psychotherapy. It could be participation in some shamanic rituals or native rituals and so on. So I think that, if it could be done, that people would have these experiences in the right kind of setting, that it could bring a lot of benefits individually, but also for humanity, for the larger context. There are significant differences, gender differences in general, which people like Otto Rank, Freud's student and kind of renegade from psychoanalysis, pointed out that women somehow participate directly in the process of creation. They sort of, they help to create. I mean, they generate the babies in their body, and men participate in this procreative process of phenomenal importance only tangentially. Our role is just limited to minutes. We are kind of removed from that process. So there's much more of a tendency to create in some other ways, of sort of achieve something in some other ways than women are doing, and women seem to be much closer naturally to the kinds of values that men develop when they go through this kind of a transformation. We have managed to sort of masculinize, a lot of women, sort of get them excited about masculine values and so on. So that, for example, the significant part of the feminist movement has been competition for the kinds of values that men who have done some work on themselves would not be interested in anymore. Things like who's going to be the presidents of the companies and so on. Those should be self-evident things. This shouldn't even be a part of the discussion. But I think there's another deeper part in the feminist movement where women draw somehow their sense of power from their participation in the cosmic scheme. It has to do with the reproductive function, with the fact that they create life, that they participate in humanity in this kind of way. But even in some other directions, I mean, there are more already there, if you want. There's much more need somehow in them for interpersonal interaction, for kind of sharing with other people, whereas men have much more of a kind of a individualistic kind of a goal for their life, sort of again along this kind of linear trajectory, to achieve something. To intensive research material so that you would understand these substances, you would understand these states. We are in a very peculiar kind of situation that Bobby Kennedy actually brought up in this discussion in, I think it was in the Congress, where he said, you know, we are in the strange situation that these hundreds of thousands of young people have been experimenting with these substances, and the professionals don't know anything about it. So I think it could reach, people could have these experiences with pure substances, with the right kind of set and setting, and they would not only benefit from it themselves, but you would collect You see, we are facing a situation where hundreds of thousands, probably millions of people are involved in this kind of experimentation. And if you would approach it rationally, you would want to create centers in which